welcome to another episode of Family and Relationship Fix It. In today's video, we'll be looking at submission. We'll be looking at the origin of submission, who is a woman supposed to submit to, what brought about the concept of submission, and to what extent is submission necessary. Because sometimes some of these concepts are overflowed. So we're going to be creating a balance. Submission started after the fall of man. Nothing in the account of God's creation of the woman suggested that when God brought the woman to Adam, he told her to be in submission or in subjection to Adam. God's plan was for these two to coexist, take decisions together, and be responsible for the new family he created. Something necessitated the hierarchy we have in the family system, and that is the fall of man. After Eve, God deceived and lured the husband into rebelling against God. God dished out punishment for her. God cursed the serpent, cursed the ground for the sake of man, punished the woman. And the punishment was in threefold. God said, your desire shall be on your husband shall rule over you, and also you will have difficulty during childbirth. This is the summary of the punishment of the woman for allowing herself to be deceived. It's not as if God wanted us to be under subjection. No. That was not the original plan. The plan was for us to be free, have our freedom, have our liberty, have the same authority to discuss and to do everything we want with the man. But the first woman sold us out. You don't need to blame her, because with the way some of us are behaving, if we also in that garden, we would have still eaten the same fruits. So don't bother blaming Eve. It's the same thing. Let's continue. From that point, God made it clear He needed a family system that is governed on hierarchy, where somebody is higher than the other. He placed the man as the head and the woman as a vital subordinate. Yes, men, I want you to pause at this point and listen very well. If you are sufficient by yourself, God would not have created the woman. God brought the woman into the picture because you could not cope without her. So don't mistreat your wife. Treat her as a vital aspect of your life. Don't neglect her, don't take her for granted. Her position is one of honor and dignity. Let us take this one after the other. But immediately after the fall, the woman is expected to be under her husband. I'm taking this slowly because I don't want to rush it. I want to explain it so that you understand it clearly. There is nothing to hide. There is nothing to mix words about. It's as simple as that. God made it so. If you fear God, you are supposed to be comfortable with this arrangement. It's for the good of the family. From here now, we are able to understand that submission came as a result of woman's disobedience to God's instruction of don't eat the fruit in the garden. That particular fruit of knowledge of good and evil that God said to Adam, don't eat. The same instruction was passed to Eve. She decided to get herself deceived, and from then God saw that she is not supposed to be the head of the family, and he decided to give Adam that right and responsibility. You don't take it out on men. God gave them the right, allowed them to enjoy their God's given right. That is how this began. If there was no sin, there wouldn't have been any need for you and I to submit to our own husband. This brings us to the next point. Who should we submit to? If you check the book of Ephesians chapter 5, 21 and 22, the first thing the Bible said, submit yourself to one another. Before Enoch came back and said, women, submit yourself to your own husband. Note the words there. Who should we submit to? First of all, we are supposed to submit ourselves to one another. As a man, as a woman, when we meet outside, we meet in the church, we meet in our various offices, God expects us to submit to one another, have mutual respect for one another. In the marriage system, this is where God stressed the concept of a woman submitting not the word to her own husband. Be very specific about that. God did not tell a woman to go about submitting to every random man out there. He has placed one woman under the headship of one man. And that is the man he said you should submit to. That is who you are supposed to submit to. It doesn't make you to go out there to insult every man on trouser. No. But when it comes to everything that has to do with submission in respect to marriage, it's for the woman to submit to her husband. In her home, the man is the king. He is the head of the marriage, he's the head of the family institution. You don't negotiate that, you don't argue on that. The Bible said he will have the rule over you. And the next point, to what extent is a woman supposed to submit to her husband? I want to hit this point clearly. To the extent that the man is submitted to Christ. A woman is supposed to submit to her husband in all things. But to every rule on earth, there is an exception. The exception comes when a man is giving you a clear instruction that contradicts God's word. You are not meant to be under subjection to his authority at that point. It killed Sapphira. When Ananias brought the suggestion of them selling the plot of land and keeping part of the money, if Sapphira had said, no, I'm not a party to this, I'm not in support of it, she would have saved herself. And that is what God expected of her at that material time. But because she decided to disobey God willfully, she was not just submitting to her husband. That is her mindset. She loved the idea. So all she did was to embrace her nature. So you don't tell me tomorrow that a man, because I've seen some arrangements at the course of my counseling sections, I've seen somebody coming up with arrangements of a man in a bid to look for money. You make plans for your wife to sleep with a rich man to raise money for the family. My dear, tell him no. He is sending you to commit adultery, and that is out of God's plan and purpose. You cannot disobey God willfully because you want to submit to a man. That is not part of what we are talking about with respect to submission. Understand that you have a race that you are running. Understand that you will stand before God to account for your activities on earth. There is boundary to everything, including submission in marriage. But with respect to how the family is being run, and every other instruction that does not contradict God's word expressly, you are under biblical obligation to be submissive. I know somebody may ask, if submission came as a result of punishment, now that I'm a born again, now that Jesus has paid the price on the cross, now that Jesus died for my sin, why are we still under this curse? Why are we still serving this punishment? I want to give you this simple example. After giving your life to Christ, God did not come down from heaven to continue to mold man's hand. One of the punishments that God placed on the woman that day was the fact that you will have a painful labor. Till today, childbearing is still something that comes with excruciating pain. No matter how you want to see it. If that did not automatically wipe off the first you gave your life to Christ, I want you to know that as long as this earth remains, the doctrine of submission is still standing. And for God to let you know that you have not outgrown this, He still re-emphasizes it in the New Testament by asking the wife to submit to her own husband. Yes, we have been liberated, but we have not yet wear the glorified body that Christ promised us at the end of time. So let's continue to flow with God so that the family system and family relationship can return back to the original plan and purpose of God, which is peace and a progressive and calm atmosphere where children can grow in wisdom and in the knowledge of God.